American families are paying more at the pump as the Iran conflict fuels an energy crunch across the U.S. But despite growing public anger over soaring costs, Donald Trump continues to hail the economy and market performance. Trump is pointing to record market rallies as proof of economic strength amid the Iran crisis. Yet millions of Americans are facing painful fuel price hikes as oil markets remain shaken by the Hormuz standoff. Trump continues to praise his own leadership and even pats himself on the back, just days after major U.S. airlines were reportedly forced to seek emergency assistance amid rising fuel costs and operational pressure. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz remains at the center of the global oil crisis despite mounting U.S. naval operations in the Gulf. Analysts warn continued disruption in the key shipping route could deepen economic pressure worldwide. And as tensions rise, a question lingers. Is a war-hungry Trump losing touch with voters ahead of the midterm elections in November? Ahead of the November midterm elections, the U.S. president celebrated a fresh stock market record, seizing on the rally as proof that his economic stewardship is delivering big wins for investors. Trump touted the record-breaking gains on Wall Street as evidence of a booming economy, arguing that rising indices show confidence in his leadership despite mounting concerns over war and inflation. On May 6, both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite closed at record highs, rising by about 1.46% and 2% respectively, underscoring the strength of the latest surge in equities. The rise was driven largely by a spike in tech and AI-linked stocks, according to coverage that noted how chip makers, cloud firms, and artificial intelligence plays led the charge upward. The Dow Jones also climbed by more than 1%, pulling closer to its own record levels and reinforcing the impression of a broad-based rally across major U.S. indices. Analysts said the gains were partly attributed to renewed investor optimism over a possible breakthrough in Iran talks, with markets betting that diplomacy could ease geopolitical risks and energy fears. A drop in global oil prices was also triggered by growing hope around those peace talks, as reports suggested that progress at the negotiating table might soon translate into more stable supplies. Despite Trump's upbeat claims about the economy, the U.S. national average petrol price remains stuck at a multi-year high, keeping day-to-day costs painfully elevated for many American households. Petrol prices across America have climbed to an average of $4.48 per gallon, according to reports, piling extra pressure on drivers, small businesses, and the wider transport sector. Notably, before a brief dip on May 6, petrol prices had already surged by about 11% in just 2 weeks, turning fuel into one of the most visible symbols of the current economic squeeze. Household expectations for food and fuel inflation are now at their highest level since 2022, according to the U.S. Federal Reserve, reflecting deep public anxiety about rising living costs in the months ahead. Trump's stock market celebrating post came amid separate reports that the U.S. and Iran were working on a one-page memorandum, suggesting that behind the scenes both sides are edging toward formally closing this phase of the conflict. That memorandum is expected to officially end the war, but thorny issues like the future of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's nuclear program will remain unresolved and still subject to tough, drawn-out negotiations. On April 29, Trump met with oil executives and reportedly said the blockade was more effective than bombing, a remark that quickly drew attention. Remember, Tehran had demanded that the U.S. blockade must end before any peace deal could be made, making the energy issue central to any possible negotiations. At the meeting with oil executives, Trump also raised efforts to alleviate global oil price pain, signaling concern over the wider economic fallout. Trump additionally discussed ways to minimize the impact of the blockade on American consumers, as pressure grows on households facing higher fuel and shipping costs. The details were revealed in an Al Jazeera report, which cited a White House official as the source of the information. U.S. budget airlines have reportedly sought billions in aid as soaring fuel prices continue to squeeze their finances and disrupt planning. The trade group asked the Trump administration for $2.5 billion to help offset the rising cost of jet fuel, according to the report. The trade group said it was seeking relief in order to keep ticket prices affordable, as reported by Al Jazeera, amid fears that higher costs could be passed on to passengers. The Association of Value Airlines said smaller carriers have been hit the hardest by fuel costs, warning that low-cost operators are especially vulnerable to prolonged price shocks. The group said that temporary government support would help preserve industry competition, arguing that financial assistance could prevent smaller carriers from losing ground to larger rivals. The trade group represented Frontier, Allegiant, Avelo, and Sun Country Airlines, reflecting the concerns of several budget-focused airlines facing mounting pressure. US Airlines' appeal for help was reported in an Al Jazeera article on April 28, bringing wider attention to the financial strain caused by rising fuel costs. The United States is now headed for crucial midterm elections on November 3rd this year, a nationwide vote that will effectively serve as a referendum on Trump's leadership and his handling of war and the economy. Rising prices across the country are threatening Trump's Republican Party in these midterm elections, as voters increasingly link their economic pain at the pump and in supermarkets to the party in power. The midterms will decide control of both chambers of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, determining whether Trump faces a friendly legislature or a hostile one for the rest of his term. Republicans currently hold narrow majorities in both chambers of Congress, meaning even a small shift in voter sentiment could be enough to flip control back to the Democrats and dramatically change Washington's balance of power.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.